Shalom, friends. Akiva Gersh here. We're living in very crazy times where people around the world are protesting against Israel's right to defend itself. And not only that, Israel's right to exist. Many people in recent years have even taken it further, saying that the Jewish people have no history in this land, the land of Israel. But when you come to this land, you see that there are incredible archaeological sites that prove that point wrong very clearly, that there are an incredible network of archaeological sites that show how strongly the Jewish people are connected to this land and how deep our roots are in this land and how our history goes back many thousands of years. Now, there's many examples of this, but one of the most powerful and inspiring and clearest examples of this is the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem. We call it the Kotel in Hebrew, which means the wall. Now, we know Jerusalem is the spiritual capital of the Jewish people. It's been that way for 3,000 years, since the times of King David. It expanded over the years, over the generations, in various different directions. In fact, a little side note, it's interesting to know that Jerusalem has never been as big as it is today. The size of Jerusalem today as a city, it's never been even nearly as large as it is today. What we call the Old City today is what the original Jerusalem looked like thousands of years ago. And of course, when you go into the Old City, the main place that people want to go, and the main place that people are called to and attracted to is the Kotel, the Wailing Wall, the Western Wall, a place where people of all faiths are invited to come and pray. It's open 24/7. It never closes. You don't have to be Jewish to go there. I've been there hundreds and hundreds of times, and one of the most inspiring things for me to see is that people of other faiths, ethnicities, religions, from other lands, from all lands, feel welcome there, feel comfortable there, feel safe there to pray in their own language and in their own way. That's the Jewish people. We were given Jerusalem by God. We were given Jerusalem as our spiritual center, but knowing that there's something about Jerusalem that's meant to be shared with the whole world. Back to the Kotel. The Kotel itself, the Western Wall, the Wailing Wall, was built around 2,000 years ago by King Herod, the last king of Israel appointed by the Romans. Now, why did he build this wall? The wall itself was not actually part of the temple. In those days, that was the Second Temple period. The temple, the Second Temple, had already been rebuilt a few centuries before by Jews returning from Babylonia, the first exile of the Jewish people. And when they came back, they found Jerusalem itself and the temple specifically in ruins, piles of rubble. So they went to rebuilding the temple, Second Temple, which was the main worship site for the Jewish people. They rebuilt it on the same site where it needed to be. And it lasted like that for a few hundred years. When King Herod came along, he was, besides being very, very crazy and paranoid, not the nicest of guys, but he was a genius of an architect. And he felt that Jerusalem needed to look way more beautiful. And the Temple Mount itself, the area around the temple, needed to be much larger to accommodate the incredible amounts of people that came there. So that's what he did. Without destroying the temple, he basically leveled out the mountain that the temple was sitting on. Now, this took many, many years, decades, in fact, and he leveled it out and he filled it in with rubble and with earth to make this flat platform that we see today. And in order to keep this, altered mountain from crumbling, from falling, he built retaining walls on all sides, on the east side, on the north side, on the south side, and yes, on the western side, right? The western side, the western retaining wall is what we call the Western Wall today, or the Wailing Wall, or again, in Hebrew, the Kotel. It wasn't part of the temple. Nobody went to pray there back then. It was a wall that was meant to hold up the mountain so that the temple itself, where people did go to worship, to connect, bring sacrifices, could go to safely. And again, there was this beautiful large area now built around the temple to accommodate all the pilgrims that came there multiple times a year. So then why, you might be asking, is the Western Wall so important? Well, it's all we have basically today, right? There's not much left from the Second Temple times, specifically on the Temple Mount. Around Israel, there's lots of remnants and artifacts from the Second Temple times, but from the temple itself, on the Temple Mount, very little. The Western Wall, right, is one of the few remaining reminders of what was there 2,000 years ago. And for many, many centuries, Jews were not allowed to go onto the Temple Mount. Right? It's a very kind of complicated area religiously, politically, geopolitically. But the Western Wall It's a place, at least today, right? And for many centuries, Jews can get to, Jews can go, and Jews can pray. And it became the place. It became the place where Jews would go and pour their hearts out and cry. That's why it's called the Wailing Wall, yearning for a return to Israel, to Zion, to Jerusalem, to rebuild the temple one day, the third temple, right? And so once Israel took over Jerusalem as a result of the Six-Day War in 1967, we expanded the area around the Kotel, the Western Wall, right, which at that time and for many centuries before that was a very, very narrow kind of alley-like area with buildings and houses all around, very, very crowded. But in 1967, Israel, obviously understanding how important the Western Wall was, expanded the area, cleared the area, and made the beautiful Western Wall Plaza that we know today to accommodate, right, the thousands of people that would come there, right, every single day, week after week, month after month, year after year. And today, when looking for proof, for evidence that the Jewish people have a long and deeply rooted history in this land, again, you can find many, many examples of it, but one of the most incredible examples is right in the heart of Jerusalem, the Western Wall itself.